Pledge allegiance. Okay, at this time, I will extend the privilege of the floor to the Honorable Assemblyman Dan Steck.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chairman. Thanks for having me on today. I hope everyone's well on this beautiful Friday morning. Happy Juneteenth. It's a state holiday. I don't think it's a county holiday. I suspect next year it will be, though. So it's a nice, momentous occasion to have our first board meeting on the first holiday that New York has recognized as Juneteenth. I'm sorry. And, just checking in since our last meeting a month ago, a lot's happened, as you all know, some not good and some hopeful. But on the COVID front, the numbers are looking much better. And I think the last time I spoke with you all, I think I was telling you that the two main groups of calls that we were getting was unemployment issues and business issues. Can I open? What are my rules? That sort of thing. I'm happy to say that we've definitely turned a corner in unemployment. We still continue to get a handful of those, but it's slowed down. So I think that the state DOL is catching up with that surge. And then we still continue, obviously, to evolve with the reopening and the phases and what's meant in each phase. I want to commend Ryan Moore, representing Warren County, on these control room calls. He's done a great job advocating for the region and specifically Warren County's issues. And I've gotten very positive feedback as to how things are going for Warren County in those calls. So with that said, I think I lost video. Can you all still hear me, Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. And then, but, there's still questions remain, with the reopening. Yesterday, we had an event with the Chamber of Commerce in front of Aviation Mall, just pointing out, in addition to the numbers heading in the right direction and encouraging us that we're on the right path and we can continue to reopen our economy and save these businesses and save these jobs and save your revenue. That there's some questions of, fairness and whether or not things make sense. If you have a entrance onto the street or into a parking lot, you're allowed to be open. But if you have it into the center of a mall, you can't be open. And it seems to everyone there was a bipartisan group of people, both sides, all layers of government and both sides of the aisle, all basically saying the same thing, that, hey, we think that there should be a way to give guidance to let these small stores inside the malls be able to open just like the anchor stores or the big box stores, especially when you got hundreds of people in some of these big box stores. So that was our advocacy yesterday. I know that we're all continuing to struggle with that. But on the downside, since we last spoke a month ago as a group, we've had certainly some criminal justice problems and concerns that have sprouted up around the country, stemming from the killing of George Floyd and the reactions and protests that sprung from that. And we were back in session a couple weeks ago in Albany, passing a lot of criminal justice reforms, some that I supported, some that I did not. But again, I think that I think it's been said best that you can both support law enforcement and support our communities and the issues of our communities. They're not mutually exclusive. And I think that's where most of us are. Most of us, not us in government, but most of us as Americans are. I think it's important to remember that. But we continue to work forward on those issues. I suspect that we will not be going back into session for at least the next 3 weeks, if at all, between the upcoming primaries and then the Independence holiday. I suspect that we're done for a while, but we did do it remotely. It seemed to work all right. Although I think as the surge of the urgency of the emergency is behind us, the ability to justify remote sessions is going to be harder as time goes on. So I don't know if we'll be going back this summer or not. But if we do, it'll probably largely stem from financial concerns. I know that you're all holding your breath and have been for a while on your funding levels. The schools they voted on budgets, really not knowing what the state aid is truly going to be. So it was a stab in the dark. I think that a lot of budgets made, and that may require further state action depending on what the federal government does or doesn't do in the form of financial assistance to the state. So those are the issues that we're dealing with. Again, on the COVID front, I think we all should be encouraged by the direction that our numbers are going, both statewide and in the capital region, and specifically in Warren County. So now's not the time to take the foot off the gas. I think it's still important to socially distance and be cautious and wear the mask. But again, I think that we could probably do more for reopening our economy. And again, just looking at, why is that business allowed to be open and that one not, sort of thing. So with that, if there's any questions, but again, I hope everyone's well. It's been difficult not seeing you all as often as most of us would like. Maybe for some of you, that's a good thing with me. I don't know. But I know that you're all working hard. Your towns are all working hard. The county is, and as a taxpayer and a resident in the county, traveling it as I do, the towns all look great. Your workforce is out getting the job done. The highways, your crews are working. The town water department's been out flushing hydrants, and so I know that everyone's working hard getting the job done, and it doesn't go unnoticed, and it certainly doesn't go unappreciated. But I know that every once in a while, it's a good thing to say so. So to the county and all your towns and the city and the village, thank you for everything that you're doing and your patience as we all try to move through this mess together.
Okay, any questions for Assemblyman Steck? Yes, Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Chairman. Dan, thank you very much. I have to say, you look great. You're losing weight there, my friend.
Well, the phone takes some pounds off, I think, Brad.
Well, you're looking spectacular.
Oh, thank you.
Questions, Rachel and Doug Beatty and myself took some of the masks from Warren County and separated and bagged them up, and we've been distributing it. And I've been now that the restaurants are opening up, I'm doing more of a push and dropping off. I have bags of 30s and 50s depending on the size, and compliments to Warren County and expressing our concerns of masking everybody. I really believe this is one of the things. I don't care wearing them, as I've been explaining to people, but if we all wear one, we keep all our germs to ourselves and keep it spreading. So I think it's a great thing. It's been well perceived by everyone that I've dropped off to, and I'm sure Doug and Rachel can contest the same. That the people are just so appreciative, and it's just getting the mass out there. But really, what I wanted to say is there a reason why the assembly cannot do like Zoom meetings like we are?
Well, our sessions were broadcast, so I know that they're available for the public to watch. And so that's not an issue. I just think it's a perception issue for us. That everything else is opening. People are going physically back into places. And it's harder for the public, and it's certainly harder for the media and the press, and activists and advocates to do their job if we're not physically present in Albany for them to buttonhole us in the hall or in person. So I think that's the concern. But as far as viewing what we do, that's been online and available, but it's and it loses something. Of course, it's not ever as good as live or in person. But I think that just the issue that I have with it is that you can't ask us questions as a group or individually. That interaction is lost. We're just kind of going in there and passing legislation largely in a vacuum. But they do them on actually the medium that we use is Zoom. So that's what we remote into, a secure Zoom connection.
Well, I would imagine that you'd need like a 72-inch TV screen to get most of the assembly on there to see who's speaking. But no, I was just wondering because everybody's waiting for the state to make the decisions they have to be making, and we're all working hard, and I'm not knocking that, but really we need the state together, to help us reopen sooner and come up and the more what I've been finding out, the more heads that are in the game and contributing to opening them up, the quicker we can get going with the decision. But I agree that our slow approach has been the best approach. Our numbers are good. The states that didn't have the slow one. So I think what we're doing, but people are just, they're frustrated. And I keep saying, I understand, but please have patience, and because there is no rule book for this and there was no playbook to follow. So, but thank you, Dan, for everything. And thanks for keeping.
You're welcome. Thanks. Thank you, Brad.
Supervisor Simpson.
Assemblyman Steck, I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the town of Horicon for the passage of the legislation, including Grant Lake and the inland waterways, which opens us up to many opportunities with waterfront revitalization. So thank you and Senator Little for that effort and passage.
Well, you're very welcome. As a matter of fact, I neglected to say in the session that we just went back to, remote session we did a week or so ago, in addition to criminal justice reforms, a lot of local bills that didn't get done before we wrapped up at budget time that normally would have happened the last few days of session did get done, including I had 3 local bills that went through, and including one for Warren County, the one for Brant Lake as an inland waterway. So you're very welcome, Supervisor.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman Thomas. Assemblyman Steck, I was wondering if there's any talk of legislation to amend the open meetings law to make meetings for local governments by Zoom permissible for longer than what the governor is put forward through the executive orders.
Not that I've seen, Supervisor. I'd support that, but it hasn't been a topic that's come up. At least that I've seen. I mean, maybe in a smaller circle, there's a bill out there with a sponsor, but as far as getting any traction where we're briefing it and getting closer to take it up, not that I've seen.
Thank you.
Supervisor Molino.
Good morning, Dan. I just want to thank you for all you're doing for our county and what you do on your job and keeping us informed. And also Ryan, he's been working really hard with all the supervisors, keeping us up on all the things. And if we have questions, we call him. But I have one question I'd like to ask you, which I get from my business people.
Sure.
Is anything being moved with that interruption insurance for business people down in Albany? I know there's something on the table, but has anything been done? Because
that didn't come up. Yeah, that
small business people.
Yep. No, that unfortunately did not come up either. That's going to be a tricky discussion, very expensive discussion. And again, that wasn't something that moved through committees at all last week. And again, is it possible that we go back in later this summer? Yes. I suspect, though, if we do go back in, it will be COVID kind of, wrap up of COVID and financial issues associated with COVID related. So if that's the case, then I suppose the business interruption insurance issue might be among those things that come up, but it didn't come up when we were in session last week.
Well, thank you, Dan. And, most of the business people know it's a lot of money if they had to put out insurance company. But
yeah, absolutely.
A bunch of others would even take half of what we lost just to get it going again. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Gene.
Next we have Supervisor Seaver.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jean actually alluded to part of my question, so I had lowered my hand. But I appreciate you being here, Assemblyman Stack, and hopefully we can continue to have Senator Little and Congresswoman Stefanik join us on the agenda and monthly. And I know they're both very committed as well to giving us those state and federal updates. We appreciate it. And Dan, anytime you're with advocacy, certainly you're at large. You've got 4 of us here for Queensberry as well in Warren County, and we're happy to join in.
All right.
Did I disconnect?
Yeah, I had a hard time with your audio. I lost your audio for a minute, but
if there's something we could do about the internet in Queensberry lately, that would be wonderful too. I know that's a big topic, but I'm connected through my phone, and I know all of us in Queensberry are also struggling to stay connected.
Absolutely.
So that's
So many people are on it now. I think, you know,
Yeah.
we've jammed it. We've flooded it because more and more people are doing this. And that infrastructure is something that it's better here than it is a lot of places in the Adirondacks. But you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that we're always investing in it, making sure it's moving forward.
Well, we look forward to you fixing that for us, Assemblyman Stack.
I'm going to try. Thanks.
Next is Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dan, good to see you join us. Thanks for participating. I have a couple questions. The state was 6.1 billion short before the pandemic. 6.1 billion in just this year's budget alone.
Yep.
6.1 billion. And now estimates, and they're just estimates, 15 to 20 billion short in New York State.
Correct.
So we're already the highest tax state in the country. That's a fact. So what's the mood down in Albany about raising taxes again and even further on an already strained population in New York State? I'm curious, what are you feeling? What are you sensing?
Well, not to get overly political in this morning's meeting, but there are two sides of the aisle down there, and one side of the aisle seems to tend to go towards raising more taxes on businesses, on the wealthy, on the super rich. It's a New York City based mentality, I think, and there's a lot of representatives from New York City. So, but it hasn't moved forward yet. I think the Senate is a little more moderate in how they look at this, just because of the composition of the Senate is a little more close to moderate. And I think the governor's been very cautious about wanting to further increase taxes, but he feels a lot of pressure, I think, from a lot of my assembly colleagues. But I could tell you that my conference has always been cool to raising taxes, and certainly, while we have unprecedented financial challenges in front of us that are going to require out of the box thinking and out of comfort zone decisions, I'm just not sure that $15 to $20 billion hole is going to be addressed by raising taxes. And that's why I think a lot of the decisions have been put off on what to do with school aid and local aid, your CHIPS funding and whatnot, because I think that there's really a wait and see approach, which I'm not criticizing, but we've been waiting for a long time now as to whether or not the federal government is going to do anything to pardon the expression, to bail us out with federal funding. But I think that that's what their hope is, that'll happen, and then that'll take the pressure off of the need to raise taxes. But make no mistake, there's a large and vocal group, certainly in my house from the city, that would love to raise taxes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anyone? No, I guess not. Assemblyman, I'd like to thank you for attending and giving us an update, and thank you for all your advocacy on our behalf and your work.
You're all very welcome. And again, I hope everyone it's a beautiful Friday out there. Hopefully your meeting won't go too long and you guys will be outside, enjoying a little bit of the weather, and have a great weekend. And just to all of you, all 20 of you, if there's anything that I or my office can do for you, your town, or any of your constituents, by all means, please don't hesitate. Give us a ring.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to see you.
Yep. You too, Dennis. Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. We need to take one step back and do the roll call, please.
Mr. Conover?
Here.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Here.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier? Here. Hogan?
Here.
Mr. Dickinson?
Here.
Carlino? Mr. Sprout?
Oh,
Here.
Mom's around someplace.
Mr. Wild?
Present. Just send them around the back.
McGowan?
Here.
Ms. Seaver?
Present.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Ms. Shepler? Here. Mr. Garrity? Chairman Thomas,
Here,
quorum is established.
thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the May 15th, 2020 board meeting, subject to correction by the clerk. Moved by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor McGowan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I do have a note that Congresswoman Stefanik might be on the line. Is that the case?
Good morning, Chairman. It's Michael Ostrander, our District Director. The Congresswoman is not on.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? And thank you once again for inviting me. Happy to participate and listen in. The one highlight that I'd like to just make sure that the Board of Supervisors is aware of is the delegation letter that the Congressman sent to the governor on Monday regarding releasing the FMAP money to counties. On Tuesday, the governor announced that he would release that money to the counties. So we're hopeful that that's a good shot in the arm for all the counties in the 21st Congressional District, and certainly appreciate you allowing me to participate, and thank you to everybody there.
Okay. Supervisor Seaver has a question for you.
Thank you. Hopefully I keep my audio this time. Thank you for joining us. Can you guys all, is it working, Tammy? Am I good? Okay, Claudia's saying yes, thanks. So I just, Mr. Chairman, wondered, it's so helpful to have both Assemblyman Steck, but last month was great with our Congresswoman and our state senator and assemblyman. Could we just send like a formal letter or email invite to all three reps until we're kind of through the major crisis with COVID? Those updates have been very, very, very helpful, and I'm sure that provided either they can join in or a rep from their office like we're seeing right now, just a formal invite would be great. And I'm
Yes,
losing this again.
actually, we do that now.
Oh, I guess. Well, if you could send that out to the board, that would be great. I didn't realize that was going out. I had asked about a formal letter inviting everyone, so thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Beatty, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask Ms. Stefanik's office. I know a concern when I was in Washington, D.C. that was expressed by Ms. Sieber and myself and a number of other representatives from across the state, that when federal money is sent, often it is sent to the state, and the state seems to take a cut off the top. And there's a strong consensus that when federal money is sent, that it goes directly to the counties and not to the state, because again, the state seems to want to take a cut off the top. So I just was asking, I'd like to know from Ms. Stefanik's office if that's I wouldn't say a priority, but a concern that federal money be sent directly to counties to assist in the pandemic. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the question. The short answer is yes, the Congresswoman is very supportive of the money going directly to counties and local municipalities. She's publicly stated that. I know that it's still a work in progress for the next stimulus bill to be included in terms of federal funding being sent to the local municipalities, but the Congresswoman is very supportive of it bypassing the state and heading right to the local municipalities and the officials in charge.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm pleased that she's on top of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, well, welcome, Mr. Ostrander. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to the Board of Supervisors for all of your partnership with our office, and we continue to look forward to working with everybody on the call to not only get through the pandemic, but hopefully get back to normalcy rather soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is a report by the chairman of the board. As everyone knows, we are in phase 3 of the reopening. It's been a long slug here to get to this point. Our metrics are very good. We were down to no positive cases a day or so ago, and then now we have one. So we're heading for phase 4. I would be remiss not to caution not only ourselves but the public that we need to continue to do the protocols, the masks, the wash your hands, the distancing, etc. This virus hasn't gone away and won't be going away anytime soon. So with that said, I would like to thank the public for helping us get to this point. And I would like to extend a special thank you to our Public Health Office, Director Janelle Jones and Assistant Director Pat Belden, and all the nurses in the Public Health Office. It's been a long 3 months, a lot of work. I'd like to extend a thank you to the Sheriff's Office for checking up on the people that were in quarantine, doing the daily checks. Thank the County Attorney's Office for drawing up the paperwork to deal with the quarantines, and also our Emergency Services Office for all the assistance they've provided and continue to provide. And I'd like to especially thank our county administrator. I think he needs to be recognized for all, and I think most of us see it, all the hard work he's done. He's on top of all this stuff all the time, and I just can't say enough about him. I thank you very much for all his hard work. And beyond that, I would like to thank everyone at the county that's been working. I don't want to leave anybody out, but I felt these folks needed recognition that they've been here since the middle of March working at this and continue to. I did attend nearly all of the committee meetings this past month. I also attended the department merger discussions that in the Shared Services Committee. And thanks Supervisor Beatty for bringing that forward and having that discussion. I've been present on the daily Capital Region Control Room calls each day around 2 p.m. They seem to be working quite well. It helps us get things moved up to the top of the list quicker than it would without them. I participated with NISAC with the last couple of evening calls that they were having. They've ended now. The last call, they did stress the enhanced FMAP money that Congresswoman Stefanik wrote a letter about, and I believe the governor has decided to release. That was like 6.5% enhanced FMAP money directly to the counties. NISAC was also calling for a list of infrastructure projects needs, and I would like to thank Sarah Frankenfeld. I'd like to thank Sarah Frankenfeld for her efforts in putting that list together, and I'd also like to thank Chairman Conover. Without him, we would not have had that list to put together. Thank you very much, Chairman, for your insight and your having that done. These things will be gathered together by NISAC and presented to the Congress, to our congressional representatives, for a future infrastructure bill, and they totaled up to $136 million in projects for Warren County. I attended the weekly environmental recovery group meetings. Again, I'd like to thank Supervisor Wild for leading that up, and we have a great group of participants, and I'd like to thank all of them for their expertise and their insights, and I think it's really functioned well, and it's helped get the word out and what everybody needs and what direction we should be going in. So thank you very much, Supervisor Wow. On May 28th, I attended the Intercounty Legislative meeting. That was the first Zoom meeting that the Intercounty Legislative Committee had done. On June 1st, we had a meeting about short-term rentals and basically about the collection of occupancy tax on the short-term rentals. The June 5th, we had a joint meeting with Washington County pertaining to SUNY Adirondack and a presentation by President Duffy on where SUNY's at, what they've been doing, and there'll be another meeting here probably by the end of the month about their upcoming budget. On June 8th, I attended the APA Local Government Review Board meeting, also first time by Zoom. June 10th, we met with the county clerk about reopening the DMV by appointment. She started that on June 15th and is taking appointments. I'm sure the schedule was probably well into July by now. I attended a department head meeting for developing reopening plans. Nearly all of the departments have submitted plans. The administrator has reviewed them. I'm in the process of reviewing them. However, by executive order, we're still at 50%, at least until last date I heard was June 29th. I did renew the state of emergency on this for the 16th, but I'm looking to undo it here as soon as I can. I wrote one letter on behalf of the Aviation Mall to Governor Cuomo, requesting that they be allowed to open up their interior, their stores and stuff. Office of Emergency Services has received 668 gallons of hand sanitizer, and this needs to be distributed. If you know somebody that that really needs this, make arrangements with that office or with the administrator or the clerk, and we'll get that moved out. It's not doing any good setting in the garage over there. May 20th, on May 20th, I also attended the Health Insurance Working Group meeting. And I think that concludes my report. So now we'll move on to reports by committee chairman on past month's meetings. Supervisor Shepard. Thank you. Supervisor Gary.
Yes, we're still going over the fiscal austerity plan put together by the county administrator. Also, I listened to a Zoom meeting held by Chairman Beatty on merger of departments. And then we're in the process of getting the 2021 budget schedule out. So we're going to be busy in the next couple of months. And when more people return to the county center to the work schedule, we'll be, I'm sure, we'll be meeting with them to talk about the upcoming budget season. That's it.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Conover.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. DPW did meet, represented in your packets by resolutions 211, 212, 213, and 214. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory. A question was raised regarding the rail riders by Supervisor Sieber. I believe, Ryan, you answered that question, but I think the answer was yes, that has to be approved annually by agreement of both parties. And that really concludes my report. Although I would like to mention, for those of you that may not be aware, we have had a weekly program on Lake George here in Bolton Landing on the Food Network, Thursday nights at 10 o'clock. I think it's involves 3 restaurants here in Bolton owned by the Foy family. The final episode will be aired next week, next Thursday at 10 o'clock on the Food Network. And I think it really beautifully shows and represents Lake George and the assets of our area. It's a 1-hour program. And so those of you that haven't been tuned in, you might want to pay a visit if you're not in bed by then to the Food Network at 10 o'clock. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Thank you for letting us know that. Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On May 18th, the Public Safety Committee met. Before you is one resolution, number 210. It's an extension of an agreement with the Sheriff's Office for contractual for upkeep on the communications room. Also, Soil Water Conservation District met. They have a reopening plan in place and they have operations underway. I attended a variety of Warren, Washington County IDA meetings, and right now the IDA is working heartily on the old dewatering site, getting subdivisions and road agreements in place to be able to make that available to interested parties. Attended the NISAC webinar yesterday with the Albany update to get the lowdown on what we're looking for on finances, which we'll all be dealing with here soon. I also attended the inter-county legislative meeting, as the chairman had referred to as well. On a side note, the town of Chester hosted an economic reopening information meeting 2 weeks ago, to be able to get more information out to our community on what's required of reopening. I want to thank Congresswoman Stefanik for attending, Senator Little for attending, Assemblyman Steck for attending, and I'd like to thank our so-called panel of experts, I call them. We had County Administrator Moore giving us updates on what's available out there, Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce President Michael Biddle, and Warren County Economic EDC President Ed Bartholomew, all giving vital information. There were 62 people on the call altogether, and got good feedback that these businesses were received good information and had a better idea of what's required of them. That's all I have to report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No reports today.
Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, just one committee report of, I think, of any importance, and that really had to do with a new motorcycle helmet manufacturer headquartered in Queensbury. We had, I think, a very productive meeting with the principals of this organization. Over the next 3 years, we're probably looking at a job production of maybe 15 to 20 jobs. So I think it was positive, it was fruitful, and Ed Bartholomew was putting the finishing touches on the package for them. So it's again a very positive meeting, and anytime we can encourage job creation, that's what it's all about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That's great. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairman. Environmental concerns and real property met on May 19th, and you have one resolution before you, which is Resolution 219, authorizing the transfer of funds out of our Environmental Reserve Testing Fund for the demolition of the Bay Road property. The next meeting of our committee will be on July 13th, which is the last chance meeting. Our real property director informs me that we do not have anyone yet signed up for the meeting, but it is possible that someone may want to attend at the last minute. So we will have that. It's a Monday morning like always, but it's now July instead of our previous tradition of August. The last thing I want to mention in my report is a thanks to the county sheriff's office, particularly Sheriff LaFar and all of the sheriff's officers who were there at the civil rights protests and march in Glens Falls on June 5th. It was a very peaceful event, and I really appreciate all of the officers who were there, who were keeping everyone safe. And I think I even saw Supervisor Leggett there for a little bit, checking things out, making sure we were all under control, and it was really, really nicely done. And that has a lot to do with law enforcement getting involved early and making sure that the organizers were well prepared. So thank you. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have much to report. I attended all of the meetings of the various committees that I've been assigned to via Zoom, and that's worked very well for me. I hope it works as well for everyone else, except for, unfortunately, the IDA meeting on Monday the 15th. I didn't have the correct link for that, so I had to miss that, and that's very unfortunate for me. I don't like to do that, but other than that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Human Services met this past month. From that meeting came Resolution 209. Is to continue contracts with 3 area organizations for the delivery of delinquency prevention programs, totaling $11,000 between the 3 organizations. I will be abstaining from that vote, but I encourage my colleagues to support it. The Human Services Committee will next meet this coming Monday, June 22nd, at or about 10:10 a.m. And I would encourage individuals to take a look at the packages that have been sent to you. I make a practice of also, when I get reports from BSS and Office for the Aging, to submit those to the members of that committee, and I'm more than happy to send it to other individuals also. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee met on May the 27th. And as a result of that, we have 4 resolutions: 196, 197, 218, which deals with establishing a capital project for the airport pavement management plan, and 219, which was referred to by Supervisor Brandon, authorizing the appropriation of funds from the environmental testing reserve for the demolition of a piece of property there. I also attended the Zoom meeting of the Intercounty Legislative and the Zoom meeting of the Health Insurance Workers. And I believe Treasurer Swan is here, and what kind of news he has to give to us.
Chairman, we cannot hear her on the Zoom. I'm sorry for jumping in, but we can't hear her.
You didn't hear what she said?
No.
You might be to do it again.
That's entirely up to you.
Nothing major. It's met on May the 27th. There are 4 resolutions as a result of that: 196, 197, 218, and 219. I attended by Zoom the Intercounty Legislative meeting and the Health Insurance Working. Very short report, really. I'm not sure if Treasurer Swan is on.
Yes, I do have something I'd like to say.
Okay, good.
By all means.
Good morning, everybody. Today I've got some good news, which is surprising considering where we are. Deputy Treasurer Lynch went out and basically just started looking for money. And what we came across was the long-term portion of accruals, vacation accruals had some surplus in it. And what this is the money that we use to pay somebody's vacation accruals when they retire or leave county work. The government accounting standards requires us to fund the current portion of that, but not the long-term portion. And we have been doing that for quite a while, the long-term portion. So what we've done is we've returned to surplus several funds. The first one, the general fund, we will be putting $2,435,000 back into the general fund for use to hopefully offset some of our loss of revenue. The county road fund will get $158,000. The road machinery fund will get $41,000. The employment and training fund will get $18,000, and self-insurance fund will get $16,000. Now, not only is that freeing up $2.6 million right now for the county to use, because this is going into surplus funds, not reserve funds, it's also going to allow our budget officer to have $2.6 million less to try to budget with next year. In other words, this is a long-term savings every year. So with no loss of revenue on the other side of it. So Mr. Garrity, hopefully you can start off a little bit better situation than what we originally hoped. Any questions? Did I explain that? Hopefully so everybody understands.
You explained extremely well, Mike. Come up to the town of Lake George, will you, see if we have any money hanging around.
Any other questions?
Any questions from anyone?
If you don't mind.
Yes, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael, you mentioned long-term. This long-term savings, what is long-term? What's the time frame for a long-term savings?
What it is, we've moved it into the long-term debt situation, so it'll be paid for out of there. The thing is that we average about $150,000 a year in these payouts over the last 5 years. So there's no reason to be holding on to $2.6 million. And once we got the approval from the controller's office that we could do it, we did it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Treasurer Swan, how was this divided up among the other DA and road funds, equipment funds? How was that proportioned out?
Well,
just a technical question.
Well, I really don't have that exact answer for you, but basically we returned all of the long-term portion of it, which was the $2.6 million. There still is another about $150,000 divided up into those funds to pay in case of short-term. In other words, if somebody retires right now, we've got money enough to cover any of the vacation accruals that they want. I don't have the actual percentages that we did because it was a dollar amount.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Treasurer.
You're very welcome.
See Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Personnel Administration Committee met May 27th, and I'd like to really thank the working group that we established to make sure we had all the concerns of our employees, that we recognize the concerns and how to make this a safe transition for everyone, and understanding that this is a very fluid situation. It was our Supervisor Sieber, Liza Ossendorf, Katie DiLorenzo, Amy Clute, Brad McGowan, Trish Nenger, Frank Morehouse, Kevin Pajos, Don Lehman, and Kevin Garrity. And they were able to, we all collaboratively put together a survey, and I want to really thank all the employees also for their responses and filling these out so quickly, and it really came together. It was amazing work that was done. I just want to thank everyone that was involved in that, and hopefully we made a difference, and the transition is going to go smoothly. Out of that committee meeting on the 27th, we have 3 resolutions, 215, 216, and 217. And of those 3, 217, I want to talk about it's ratifying the actions of the county attorney and withdrawing litigation against David Decker. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but I hope that all the questions and things that were presented to me were answered, and we're going in the right direction. With that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hogan, and let me congratulate you on your recent appointment to the Adirondack Park Agency.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cornell Cooperative Extension, they're returning to the office next week at 50% capacity. And while they're all excited about that, they have been hard at work at home this entire time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. They've done programs through Zoom, including some really interesting stuff like worm composting, dining with diabetes, food sustainability education, and wild edibles. All of these, as well as other programs, are available on their website for review for you to watch later at your leisure. I encourage you to do so. They're really interesting. Their annual fundraising golf tournament is going to be held August 22nd at Cronin's, and I know I've seen many of you there in the past, and I hope to see you there again this year. They're doing things a little bit differently to follow all the rules, but it should be a really great time still. Cronin's is always a good experience. And that concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson.
Having a little trouble with my mute. I'll see how long it stays on here. First off, I'd like to point out to Supervisor Conover that one of the Foy restaurants, probably the best one of the three, is actually in the town of Lake George. I know it's in Diamond Point, but it's still Lake George. The other thing I'd like to say is the OCTAX committee, we're setting up a meeting right now. And on the agenda, we want to talk about the OCTAX spending plan. And we also want to talk about our OCTAX funding. We have a lot of people have been participating in the cutbacks. I'd like to talk about a couple of them that we contract with and make sure we cut back a proper amount. So it'll be a good meeting, and it'll be announced fairly soon, if not today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just want to thank my chairman, my committee for tourism, for allowing me to call them last Wednesday and let them know that was going on. We had to have an answer by Thursday, but I'm going to give up my time. I'd like Joanne, Director of Tourism, to come up and give you a synopsis of what we have done.
Thank you. Good morning. I did send last night a copy of our modified marketing plan to all supervisors. Good morning. Last night at the end of the day, I sent a copy of our revised marketing plan to all supervisors. So you should have that in your email box. And I have some copies here if anyone would like to take a look at it. This plan has been many weeks and even months in the making as we navigate the correct time, markets, and dollars to spend on advertising. We've taken into consideration the health and well-being of our residents, hospitality employees, and guests, knowing that our local government and business partners have made every effort to ensure that safety protocols and standards are in place. The department has coordinated with our committee supervisors, our county administrator, chairman of the board, an economic recovery task force, and a hospitality communications group. So there were a lot of us involved in this decision-making. And we worked closely with our media buyer workshop to strategize the best plan on how to move forward. We collectively feel that the time is right to safely and responsibly welcome visitors to our destination. So the revised marketing plan has three goals. Those would be primarily the health and safety of our, again, our local residents, our employees, and our guests. Number two, we would like to spend some money up front to jumpstart as we approach the 4th of July season. So when Supervisor Merlino called each of our supervisors last week, we had a couple of spending options. And we came in with a mid-range approach of the dollar amount that we had set aside. We decided to spend 40% of that up front to jumpstart and get the word out now that the Lake George area and Warren County is open. And we're, again, safely and responsibly welcoming guests to the area. The third part of that would be, as we always do, just keeping in mind that we're sending folks to all parts of the county. Lake George is always our anchor, but we are driving visitors out of the Lake George area and into our other smaller communities. The budget that we have set aside for the remainder of this year is $528,000. So keep in mind that in a typical year, our advertising spend with Ad Workshop, the media buy, is $1 million, and then internally we'll spend another $150,000. So for us to spend 528, it's about half of that amount. The county administrator has asked us to, set aside dollars for next year, which we certainly did. So I have at least $650,000 that at this point in time I plan to save and roll into next year. I will say that in the beginning of this situation, when we were not spending any dollars, our staff was still, we were updating the website, we were posting on social media, we were creating all of that content, photography was taking place. Our staff is one of the most important assets that we have and that the county has. So even when we're not spending money, we're still getting the word out, we're still engaging with our consumers to let them know that we are, still here as a destination and we want them to keep our destination top of mind. So when we look at the spending plan, 428 would be from now till the remainder of the year that we would spend with Workshop, and again, 40% of that up front. So the 40% is $211,000. Then as we move into part 2 of the summer season, $184,000 we'll spend, and in the fall, about $132,000. You'll note that winter is not on here, but the thought is that if we're having a successful summer, people are coming to visit, they're staying overnight, we're collecting occupancy tax. There is money that's set aside. I don't have earmarked for winter yet, but we know and fully recognize that winter is an important season. So we will revisit that a little bit later in the summer season. Our main content is a broad overview of the Lake George area. Look to the Lake George area is the message, and that is the video that Working Pictures, our vendor, has created for us. I'm sending out a newsletter right after this meeting, and I'll share some of those videos with you. We have some stories that we will share on our major attractions and activities that always perform well. And then we have some niche pieces that we will target internally, focused on little segments around the county. Always keeping in mind that safety is the most important factor. When you look at the breakout of the different tactics, you'll see that 2/3 of the budget is digital. So that would be, we'll show the video on connected TV, so you're familiar with Netflix and Hulu and the Disney Channel and all of that. There are still commercials that appear on that. We're advertising on Google, Facebook, Instagram, retargeting people that come to our website, and if they don't click around, we'll retarget them and add again to bring them back. So the digital is 2/3 of the budget, and then 1/3 of that, about $50,000, would be our video on broadcast television. So a lot of people have questioned broadcast. We're only on the news segments before and after the news. People are absolutely watching the news these days. So a little bit in our markets of Albany, Syracuse, Utica, the New York City, DMA, Hartford, Connecticut, and we'll keep Montreal on the back burner at this point because the border is not open. Part 2 of that, again, is similar. 2/3 of it would be digital, and 1/3 would be broadcast television. So thank you to all of the partners that have been involved in this decision-making process. We're ready to move ahead and cautiously and responsibly welcome visitors to the destination.
Yes, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Joanne and Jean for giving us all the opportunity to be heard. Originally, I wasn't in favor of either of the three proposals. I had some concerns about the fact that the late fall and winter seasons really weren't addressed. But during conversations with both individuals, I came to understand and followed their plan as far as ensuring that all seasons would be equally addressed. And I want to thank them for listening to me, listening to my concerns, and giving me the opportunity to ask questions and hear from them who have certainly a lot more experience and knowledge about that industry. So that's when government works. Too often we have stuff dropped in our laps and aren't really given an opportunity to kind of research and ask questions. This certainly, this process worked for me, and I hope it worked for others also. Thank you.
Supervisor Hogan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo what Supervisor Driscoll just said. This was a really good process. I too shared, for obvious reasons, a lot of concerns about there being nothing budgeted for winter. But both Joanne and Jean took a lot of time to explain what the play is here, and I support them in it, and I appreciate their thoughtfulness and the care that they've taken in the message that we're going to be putting out. So thank you guys.
Anyone else? Supervisor Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joanne, thanks for what you've done, but I didn't hear you talk about last weekend's little blast that you did. And for the supervisors, Joanne was authorized to spend $10,000 to try to hit the downstate market. And during the communication meeting, Joanne shared some results of that, and everyone thought it was amazing results. So Joanne, I think we need to call you out on that and say thank you and great job and keep it up. And I don't know if you want to elaborate more on that, but I did hear some great things from the rest of the communications group.
So a week ago, we were at the same point. You know, the weather looks good as we approach the weekend. Should we start now to get the word out? And we had not yet spoken with each of our committee members. So I came back to a small group and we said, okay, the weather looks great. Let's just get that good positive word out and spend a small amount of money, which is $10,000. I know it sounds like a lot, and really it is. But we did that on social media. The reach for that $10,000 was 1 million people. The blog story was shared, I'm going to say about 700 times. There were 700 comments, several thousand likes, and the cost per engagement was about 50 cents. So in terms of just a last minute, let's get the word out, good, positive social media, we've got an excellent response to that. And on our call last week, Sarah Maddox happened to be on, and I was recounting some of the engagements. So from her point of view, that was excellent engagement. So, and I know that she's doing the same thing on her LakeGeorge.com and all of her other websites. So collectively, we're all doing, getting the good word out there.
Very good. Anyone else? Oh, thank you. Thank you for the information. Thank you for your hard work. Supervisor Molino, anything?
No, thank you very much, Shannon.
Supervisor Stroud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no committee report this month.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Economic Growth Development, Higher Education and Planning met last month. There's 3 resolutions in front of the board to consider. 205, 206, 207. 205 and 207 are basically extension of prior agreements. 206 is a letter to the APA requesting that they modify their cell tower restrictions and guidance so that we can expand coverage in the North Country. This passed through the committee, and we look forward to your support today to get this passed. Secondly, and I hope I don't take too much time, but the Economic Recovery Task Force has met weekly since early on in the COVID crisis. And I need to call out some individuals publicly for their great support. And I'm going to do this quickly. Ed Bartholomew from the EDC, Mark Bean from Communications, Michael Biddle from Adirondack Regional Chamber, Frank Dietrich helped with hospitality, guidance, and safety rules. Dr. Chris Duffy from SUNY Adirondack, Kathy Munsell, she helped with attractions and how the attractions were going to open safely. Laura Coles did the same with food and beverage. Gina Mincer, Lake George Chamber of Commerce. Liza Oxendorf from Employment and Training. Mark Grushaw, Banking. Of course, Frank Thomas, Ryan Moore, who's been a rock star. Sarah Frankenfeld, Janere Jones, and Joanne Connolly have all pitched in. And there's many more that I missed, but I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was a real public and private partnership. I was thrilled to see all these people donate their time to help get us open and help feed Ryan Moore with a lot of information to take down to the control room to get our businesses open. And I thank Ryan for doing that. He did a great job. So moving forward, I also attended the IDA meetings and also the SUNY Adirondack. I was thrilled to have a chance to record a commencement greeting for the graduating class. It was done in Zoom. And there will be sometime in the near future, I hope, when we open up the boardroom, that we can honor a couple of students from Warren County that excelled and graduated this year. And as Chairman Thomas mentioned, there will be additional conversations about SUNY Adirondack budget coming up shortly. So that's all I have to report today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. June 15th, we had a kind of a last minute meeting on for a resolution 223 for a grant coming in for the Board of Elections. To accept that, it is a non-matching grant. So we needed to move this forward and really just waiting for finance to just put it in the right departments, but we wanted to get the ball rolling. So I hope for your support on that resolution. Second of all, I want to just also mention between all the committee meetings, I try to hit just about everyone. Unfortunately, next week I'm going to be out of town for a little bit and on the road, so I won't be able to pick up any Wi-Fi to join in. But Monday morning I'll be there, but after that I'll be out for the week. But I also wanted to bring up on what Chairman Thomas brought up. We did get jugs of sanitizer. They're gallon jugs. They're nice. It's not too bad smelling, I have to say. But I worked with about 4 hours with Nancy over there in DPW. The problem is getting cradles for these. So we have devised up a 6-inch type PVC sonotube system with a locking arm to go through the handle. And then we've modified the pump a little bit so you wouldn't get so much because there was so much that would come out. So I think we're in the process of demoing it, and I think we've got it notched down. So anybody that will be needing a stand, I will be asking for a mere $15 donation to Warren County. But and Kevin Hajos has extra. Well, he says that he has some posts to mount it on, but you can mount it on posts, 4x4s, steel. You know, it's a pretty simple thing to work. So if anybody, please let Frank Morehouse know how many you guys might be needing, so we can get those out into our public areas and that to keep everybody safe as we're opening up. And that's all I have for a report, and thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've switched over to my phone in a selfie mode, so I'm hoping that this works. I know all of us in Queensbury, everywhere, we've been struggling a little bit with internet. So Brad, I can see you on my screen. If I keep talking and no one can hear me, as exciting as that might be for some of you, would you just give me a thumbs down or something? But Brad, I really appreciate how quickly you jump into action with some of these projects. Last month it was dividers. This month is hand sanitizer stations. And I miss sitting next to you so I can have my daily lesson on how to do some of these things. But it's impressive. So I want to stick just to my committee assignments this month. In your packet before you, you'll see resolution 203 and 204. We met on May 18th. Both of those address requests from Marcy's office with the public defender's office, and those passed through committee. Along with some other items that we talked about, I just want to highlight on May 29th, you all received an email from Don Lehman, our public information officer, who again is doing a bang up job in the midst of craziness of many comments and daily updates, which I know our community is really appreciating. But you received an email from him regarding a rainbow project that was done by our probation department. And in case that, slipped through your email, I just want to highlight how hard Amy Secor has been working on that with the probation office and what a great job she's done. Those rainbows were delivered at different places and picked up a little bit in the local media. But just to highlight the fact that, Amy had shared with us that this was a positive outcome as a direct result of the ongoing work that they do every day to ensure the implementation of restorative justice and those practices within our community. So these juveniles that participated all did so voluntarily, and it allowed our participants to develop more of a sense of belonging and responsibility and sense of our community. So I just applaud their efforts and hope that you'll take an opportunity. On Monday, Bob will be reporting a little bit more about that project for our committee members in person as well. And I thank Supervisor Leggett, who's going to chair that committee meeting for me. And I hope to be able to pop in on Monday a little bit. So in addition to that, on June 2nd, I had an opportunity, many thanks to Chairman Thomas and our County Administrator Moore, for putting together a meeting with the sheriff, with Supervisor Driscoll and Supervisor Leggett, as we talked about preparing for peaceful protests, which took place in Glens Falls, but also issued a statement on behalf of our county, partnering up with many other agencies. And to all those agencies and organizations that signed on to that statement, I think it was a very powerful statement and quite appropriate. So thank you for that. In addition, I sit on two national committees for NACO. We met for the Resilient Counties on May 22nd and for Public Safety and Criminal Justice on June 5th. Those meetings were very informative. I send on that information as applicable to those that may find it helpful, focused a lot on FEMA. And I just wanted to take a moment too and thank Chairman Thomas for his support as I reapply to an appointment on those committees going into this next year. I joined in during their, mid-year for NACO, and they have another round of appointments coming up at the end of June. So I'm very happy to say I think that there's been positive information going back and forth on that, and to have earned the support of our chairman. So thank you. Lastly, I just, at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I would like to request a roll call as it relates to Resolution 217. At that time, I will be abstaining from the vote, but not recusing myself from dialogue and discussion after having read all of the materials and consulting with our county attorney's office. And that resolution is, again, number 217, ratifying the actions of the county attorney and withdrawing litigation against David Tecker. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Supervisor Beatty.
Thanks for the intro, Mr. Chairman. Couple things. Obviously, in your packet, county facilities met. There's 5 resolutions concerning the airport. They're all fairly mundane about funding and so forth on different projects. I could read them to you, but you guys are all very intelligent individuals and can read for yourself. If there was anything super pertinent in them, I would definitely go into detail with you, or Mr. Hajos is here. He can answer any questions. We also had numerous meetings with department heads. Mr. Ryan, Mr. Moore, myself, obviously shared services has always been engaged, but now more than ever of looking where opportunities may exist to merge departments, to find opportunities to save money, because obviously it's this time more than ever, we're going to have to reduce our spending. So I thought the meetings were very fruitful. I think we had 5 meetings, if I recall, Mr. Moore, with different department heads, and we'll have more in the future. Each department head was very well informed, made very valid cases for their departments on the good and maybe potential opportunities, which I appreciated, and that will continue. Let's see here, and just a couple other short comments. I want to thank Supervisor Seaver McGowan as well for joining me and getting the thousands of masks out to the Queensbury public via small stores, via restaurants, via senior homes, and so forth. Although we can't touch every single individual, it's a very, very, very successful program, and a ton of time and effort went in. So thank you, Mr. McGowan and Ms. Siebler, for your great efforts on that. And finally, I'd like to ask the board, when are we going to put another member on the Warren-Washington County IDA? As you recall, back in January, we terminated Mr. Whitehead from the board. I wasn't for that, but I thought we were going to be putting another individual on the board, and nothing has come to fruition. I find us being shorthanded on the Warren-Washington County IDA as problematic, and I would like to know what's our game plan. We're shorthanded, and we don't seem to be concerned about that. And I believe that, no, one last thing, the hand sanitizers. Thank you, Mr. McGowan. You're like our MacGyver. And I had asked Mr. Hajos about 5 or 6 weeks ago, maybe longer, that we have hand sanitizing stations at every county-owned facility and property. I know and now we're getting a huge amount of gallon hand sanitizers in, and Mr. MacGyver / McGowan, along with the DPW, Mr. Hajos, have been very instrumental in making this come to fruition. The project is not complete, but it's well on its way, and I want to thank you guys personally for really jumping in and doing a great job on that. Safety is the primary concern of all the studies. That's a given. That's number one. And the more we can make people feel safe, tourists, our own employees, the better this whole county is going to run. So thank you very much. That concludes, Mr. Chairman, my report.
Thank you. Next, we have the report by the county administrator. Excuse me a minute. Supervisor Simpson.
Related to the IDA Doug brought up, from what I recall, we did have that on the personnel committee, and then I believe we referred the policy to legislative rules, and I don't remember whether it was looked at by legislative rules, but I'm okay with adding that to the agenda to the personnel administration if we're ready for that. And as the chairman's appointment, I think there was we were discussing whether the policy was going to be chairman's appointment with the board ratifying or voting on that appointment afterwards, and then it seems to have ended at that point.
Yeah. Well,
so without any objection, I could put it on the agenda next personnel if we're at that point.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, Administrator Moore.
Good morning, everybody. As I typically do, I have some employee anniversaries to announce. Is the audio coming through okay?
Pretty good.
20 years, Samuel Brault in DPW. 25 years, our fantastic purchasing director, Julie Butler. I hope we've got 25 more years with Julie. At 30 years, we have Scott McLaughlin from IT, who must have started when he was 10, because he looks like he's in his 30s. Greg Bolton from DPW, 30 years, and Pat Belden in public health. I cannot say enough about Pat. She and Janelle and their entire team have just done a superb job. 30 years for Pat Belden, and like Julie, I hope we get another 30 years out of her. She's fantastic. I was also asked by DSS to read an announcement of a retirement of a longtime employee, Cindy Mulcahy. She retired after a 33-year career at Warren County Social Services. Her retirement date was May 29th. Cindy started her career at DSS in 1987 as a caseworker in the preventive unit in Children's Services, which is a very, very tough job to have, let alone to start off with. But she stuck it out. She was promoted in 1992 to senior caseworker, and she served in that title for both foster care and preventive units, with most of her years spent in preventive. Beginning in 2000, she served as staff development coordinator until 2012, when that position was abolished, and then she was reinstated as a senior caseworker in 2012. And in 2016, she was promoted to supervisor in the preventive unit. She's very well respected on that staff, and everybody was sad to see her go, but we congratulate her on a long career that made a lot of difference in a lot of people's lives. So thank you to Cindy. I want to echo all of the thank yous that Chairman Thomas read off in his report. I certainly agree with every one of those. I also want to thank you as the supervisors, because you are all critical in enforcing. We may not like all the rules, but the rules have been very important to controlling the infection rate, and very important to getting this area into the position that it's in now, which is to have what I hope will be a fairly decent summer. It won't be a summer like we usually have, but I think we're going to hold our own. That is so the enforcement of these rules, all these public health measures, rests with local governments. The county, if we had to, could do building code violations. We haven't gotten there because the business community has been so cooperative and so selfless in dealing with all of this. And a lot of that is due to the one-on-one contact that they have with you as town supervisors and at-large supervisors and ward supervisors, and with all your staff. It's been a very cooperative, productive effort across the board, and I thank every one of you for playing the part that you've played in it. I might write a lot of updates, but you all read them, and then you all act on them, and that's what makes the difference at the end of the day. So thank you for that. We do have one additional positive case, which you all know. I would just like to repeat what I said last night to the business community. With every new positive case that we have, and I'm sure we'll have more. I hope we don't, but I'm sure we will. There's still a pandemic. With every new positive case we have, it's our commitment to track down exactly where it came from, why it happened, and if it happened as a result of any of our actions or inactions, that we address that and that we get it under control, so that we don't have to, go backwards like some places in this country are. This particular case came from an employer outside this county who has had some known coronavirus cases. And this person hadn't been feeling well and has been homesick, and has really only as a result of that exposed their own immediate family members. And those immediate family members are all under quarantine. So this is not unexpected, and this is a fairly easy one to handle. The nightmare, of course, is seeing something crop up because somebody from another state visited here and got a bunch of people sick in Lake George, or because we did something wrong, and that's what we're trying to avoid. And again, the role that you all play as local leaders, working with your business community, is the most important thing here. I would like to read a news article. I hope you'll indulge me. I won't try to be not too long. This is what we don't want to be. This is an article. I'm pulling it directly from the local paper, from MyrtleBeachOnline.com. The headline is "Tourists Say They Got COVID-19 in Myrtle Beach. States Give Advice as South Carolina Cases Spike." I'll read you just the first part of the story. One county health department is warning its residents about vacations after 3 people tested positive for coronavirus following a recent trip to Myrtle Beach. Several states are offering guidance on ways for their locals to protect themselves during any travel, including those to the Grand Strand. The health department in Preston County, West Virginia, announced that 8 people tested positive for COVID-19 after recent trips to Myrtle Beach. Preston County is a rural area near Morgantown and West Virginia University, with a total of 22 confirmed COVID-19 cases. One county health department is warning its residents about vacations after 3 people tested positive for coronavirus following a recent trip to Myrtle Beach. Several states are offering guidance. Oh, I'm sorry, that seems to be a repeat. Myrtle Beach and South Carolina health officials urge people to wear a mask and practice social distancing, but have yet to announce plans for any more closures because of the uptick in cases. The Myrtle Beach area also has been called a coronavirus hotspot by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. No states have yet issued bans or recommendations not to travel to Myrtle Beach. And the article goes on, but you get the picture. Horry County is a hotspot. It's because some of the things they did with their reopening were not right. I hope for their sake that they get it under control, because this is not a good look for Myrtle Beach. Here's a headline from Fox 8 in West Virginia. The headline is, health officials issue warnings after spike in positive COVID-19 cases linked to Myrtle Beach visits. Here's one from the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The headline is, state health officials blame Myrtle Beach travel for spike in coronavirus cases. You don't want to be Myrtle Beach right now. Their brand is getting tarnished, and it's up to us to make sure that our brand stays a good brand. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Report from the county attorney.
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I only have 2 things. The first being about Resolution 206. After committee, I'd had a conversation with Supervisor Hogan, who had asked for a revision to the resolution. I talked to Amanda Allen about it. We weren't comfortable making any changes to the resolution since the committee was so adamant about it being the same. But it is it's a significant change in that I think it's correct, but if it's really not significant. The only thing she asked is that tower policy, which is in quotation marks, just be changed to the correct document name. And that is policy on agency review of proposals for new telecommunications towers and other tall structures in the Adirondack Park. So that's the official name of the policy. So at some point, if that's okay with the board, we just need to vote on that amendment. And the second issue I wanted to discuss was the email that I sent to all of you on Tuesday, June 16th regarding the opioid litigation. Like I said in that email, we were asked by outside counsel to either pass a resolution allowing them to sue some of the local pharmacies or to opt out of doing that. I do want to say that Shayna Sachs is on our Zoom call so that we can ask her some questions about that and she can give us a short update on that. So at whatever point this board wants to hear from her, I don't know if we want to hear from her right now or if we want to wait until discussion on resolutions. She is here to answer any questions about that. And that concludes my report.
Well, if she is here, then let's move forward and see if there's any questions about the opioid litigation from anyone.
Sounds good.
You give us an update.
I would have a question. I know this is maybe a difficult question to answer, but is there any finality in terms of time frame here? And is the just a time frame in terms of settlement? That would be my question.
Wait, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I was on mute. So hi, this is Shayna Sachs. Thank you so much for having me. So in terms of that question, thank you for the question. So what's happening now is the Warren case is in a coordinated action in Suffolk County before Judge Gargiulo. And all of the entities that are in New York are within that litigation. It's a great place to be. The judge is very supportive of our case and his rulings have been supporting as well. In terms of a timeline, we were supposed to have the first trial, which is what's called a bellwether trial. The idea, not to bore you with legal jargon, but the idea is that different than a class action, you do a few trials and use the result of those trials as a guide moving forward. Not that the decisions would be binding, because everybody has their own individual case, but the idea is that those cases that go forward first would be a guide for future settlement, etc. So 3 cases were chosen by the court to be the first ones to go forward. It's the Attorney General's case on behalf of the state, and Suffolk and Nassau County. And Suffolk and Nassau County on Long Island were picked because they were the first and the second cases to be filed. So we were supposed to have a trial with all 3 of those plaintiffs against all of the 30 or 40 plus entities that we've sued, and it was supposed to be in March. It was supposed to start about 2 weeks after everything began to break with COVID. So the court was forced to move the trial. The supervising judge also agreed and moved the trial. The biggest problem, of course, being that we can't have a jury trial right now, and this is a jury trial case. So it was moved from March until I believe April. It was then moved until end of July, beginning of August. And just recently now the court has said that they plan on beginning that trial in September. And of course, COVID has really kind of threw everybody for a loop, and we'll have to kind of see what happens with the pandemic. But as of now, we plan on going forward in September, and we've planned accordingly. We are ready to go forward, and we hope that they will go forward in September, and we'll keep you updated on that. So in terms of settlement, which is a little bit different, we find that the best way to settle a case, and this is just standard across for any kind of case, the best way to try to settle a case is through a trial date. There's nothing that pushes a case as much as a trial date. So we were a little disappointed that the trial, of course, had to be moved, but of course, we had to do that. We can't have a jury trial in these times right now. So that's the kind of the New York piece of it. At the same time, there are discussions going on right now with more of a global settlement. And I don't know, are we in an executive session or is this public?
No, public.
It is public. Okay. So there are other conversations going on, and I will keep you updated on those.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question for the attorney?
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Shana, thanks for coming into our meeting today to talk to us. I'm not sure if I missed it, but what does the resolution about adding the pharmacies, our local pharmacies, have to do with where we are right now? If we're trial ready, why are we adding more defendants?
So remember, the cases that are going forward right now are the kind of the trial cases. They're the cases that we hope will guide settlement in the future. So there's nothing that prevents us from adding more defendants as we find new information. So when the case first started, the case was only against the manufacturers of the medication. It was then expanded to the distributors of the medication, and then further expanded into the retailers, because through discovery, we realized that those 3 conglomerates of groups we're all, for lack of a better word, we're all in it together. It's kind of like a RICO argument, how governments get, organized crime, meaning that one is related to another, which is related to another. And when one acts, they bind everybody who's related and who has knowledge of that. And through discovery, we have realized that not only were the big chain pharmacies involved, but there have been some smaller chains who were involved in the problem as well. So the issue that we had brought up recently was that there were 2 particular pharmacies in the county that had extremely high numbers of opioid sales. And it is there are two particular locations that we wanted to look into further. So we want to be able to do that, but because it's a more of a mom and pop and a smaller facility, we want to make sure that that's okay with the clients specifically. The issue with the reason why we picked about 90 or 95%, meaning how many pills were coming into the county. We were able to access the information. We know exactly how many pills those two particular pharmacies sold. Now, part of the investigation of those two pharmacies is determining, is there an outside reason for us to want to sue them? Meaning, is there another reason besides actual knowledge that they did something illegal or wrong or in violation of a statute? For example, if one of the pharmacies was next door to a cancer clinic, it would explain why they have such high numbers, because the volume of people that would come by from the cancer clinic would be high. And then that would be a company that we would not want to include in the lawsuit. If somebody is right near a hospital or in the basement of a hospital, again, that would be another one. So the reason why we wanted an answer so quickly was because I wanted to know if there was a thumbs up, thumbs down, in the sense that if you absolutely didn't want to even consider it, I will stop looking into it. But if it's something that we want to get some more information on, I would like to know that as well. Now, some counties have hundreds and hundreds of pharmacies that fit into this category. Warren only had 2. So it's a very small group to actually look into that had such a high volume.
I thought our list was like 5. I thought there were 4 or 5. There were more than 2. And so are you saying, I'm going to interrupt you one more second, then I'll turn.
It's okay.
Are you saying we don't need to authorize you right now to do anything as far as adding them as a defendant? You just want some sort of just a little thumbs up that you could look into it more? Because we were given the impression that you needed to file suit based on a statute of limitations problem that's coming up.
Yes, because we are concerned that there is a statute of limitations. So if you give me the thumbs up, we would figure it out immediately, put it into a complaint, send it over to Mary for her to approve, and then file it. So it's it is a very tight time frame. I mean, I'll probably do it this weekend. But nothing would happen without your authority, is the best way to say it.
Yes, but Mary's coming to us to make sure that she'll have that go ahead from us. So, and can you just clarify about the number of pharmacies? Is it only 2 or is it more than that? And do you feel like this will significantly assist our case?
So I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. My understanding was it was 2, but I can double check, and maybe Mary has it in front of her, but I believe it was 2. But even if it was 5, it's a small manageable number for me to review very quickly. Those were picked mean that they had 95 or more % in terms of opioids coming into the county. In terms of it changing the lawsuit dramatically, I mean, probably not. But there's a few strategy reasons as well. You know, a lot of the defenses of each of the different entities is to point to somebody else. And if you point to somebody else who's not in the lawsuit, it creates a different kind of strategy for the parties involved. I can't promise you that it would increase the number significantly, but and that's something that we could balance. If it's something that you guys are not comfortable with, then we don't move forward. But to me, including more is never a bad thing unless there's some outside reason to not include.
Supervisor Hogan has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Shana. Thank you for being responsive at such short notice. We appreciate you being here.
I wish I could be there.
We're online
to be by the water.
Well, not few of us are, so we all wish we could be there. Were online or internet pharmacies included in your analysis?
You broke up before the word pharmacy. What did you say?
Were online or internet pharmacies included in your analysis?
they're not being included in the sense of the data that we have access to. The data that's out there is called ARCOS, which is pharmacies in the United States have to report to the DEA what they sell. So I have no control over what, you know, another country may do or something online. It's not something that's documented in the same exact way. Although the idea of those are included in the case and in the history of why there is such a problem. Absolutely.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Other counties who have gone this route, specifically with pharmacies, have experienced countersuits. Can you speak to the board about these?
What kind of countersuits do you mean? Meaning they were included in a lawsuit and then got sued themselves?
Yes, the counties were sued for instituting the suits against the pharmacies.
I've never heard of that. Like mom and pops or big ones, you mean?
Big ones.
I haven't heard of
mostly big ones. Yeah.
I haven't heard of that. I mean, suing somebody who sues you is a completely frivolous idea. I mean, you have to go through the process. So I haven't heard of that, but if you have any more information, I'm happy to look into it.
All right, we'll connect offline, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor McGowan has a question.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jana, thank you so much for this. I'm just simple-minded here, and we want to sue the pharmacies, but the pharmacies don't write the prescriptions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? All they're doing is filling them, and I understand by going after them, but I'm just confused of the process for doing this, and I just I could talk to get more information on it later on, but I mean it's just, I understand going after the pharmacies, but are we going after who wrote the prescriptions too for the pharmacies to fulfill?
Okay, so there's a few things. One, the big chain pharmacies are already part of the lawsuit. Okay, so Walgreens, big ones. And just so you have an understanding of each group of defendants and what our allegation is, okay? The manufacturers is the first group, and manufacturers obviously make it. And the argument there has to do with the marketing, okay? The allegation is, and they did market it in a misleading way. And in some ways, I would call it more of a lie. Okay. And that information that the manufacturer shared with customers and consumers like yourself, but they also shared that information with physicians. Okay. Physicians get all of their information from the manufacturers. Okay. So if the person you're relying on for the information is not being truthful, and then you rely on it, it's hard to point a finger at that person. Now, I'm not saying that all doctors are perfect. By no means am I saying that, because there are certainly many, many cases where physicians clearly overstep their bounds. There's no question, right? Whether a company tells you something's addictive or not, if you see somebody keep coming into your office and asking for it, as a physician, your Hippocratic oath, you should say, something doesn't seem right here. And you're supposed to make a judgment call. So that's the manufacturer chain. Distributors is a different thing. Distributors are the company. Manufacturers give the medication to a distributor, and then the distributor distributes it to the pharmacies around the country. A distributor has a statutory requirement, state and federal law, that they have to, if they see numbers that are beyond what the DEA or beyond, what is appropriate, they are supposed to halt their shipment and tell the DEA. And our allegation, which is based on internal documents and things that we've seen, is that they didn't, and that they turned a blind eye to that. Okay. The pharmacy retailers have the same burden. Okay. They also, if they see numbers, have a duty to turn away. So companies like CVS, like Walgreens, things like that have an internal system. So do small mom and pops. They have the same requirements. So if you see as a pharmacy, whether you're a big one or a small one, and you see that the same person or the same 5 or 6 people are coming in every day with the same exact script, claiming the same exact injury, etc., CVS and other mom and pops have an obligation to turn away that business. So that's where the legal argument comes from. Now, mom and pops weren't always the focus of the litigation because the numbers seem to be pointing more towards the big companies causing the problem. Because of course, there's 50 Walgreens on every corner sometimes. So obviously they're going to have more of a volume because they have more stores. But we've come to realize now that there are some mom and pops who we believe potentially are also part of that chain of a problem. And like I said earlier, if we realize that one of these small companies are in the basement of a hospital, it would explain why their numbers are so high.
All right, no, and I don't want to carry on, but thank you very much. That was a good to the point, and now I feel
okay.
I feel able to make all the decisions I have to now.
Okay, sorry. I feel very passionately about this, so you're getting
you
going,
did a
and
great
I'm gonna
job, and thank
I'm
you.
gonna go.
Thank you all for your patience, and hope you learned something. So, as long as I did, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Shepler.
Thank you, Chairman. My concern is that I think that the pharmacists are the middleman. They're not the distributors to the pharmacies, and they're not in position.
Is someone talking? I can't hear if so.
I can't hear.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a question for you.
My concern is I believe that the pharmacies are what we would call the middlemen, and the distributors are the companies that are manufacturing these drugs and providing them to the pharmacies. But where do the orders come from, and where do the orders originate? From your physician's offices. I think the physician's offices need to be looked at first and foremost before you start going after your pharmacies for receiving the orders from the physician's offices. So, Mr. McGowan.
You were breaking up a lot, but I think I heard you say something about the pharmacies being the middlemen. I would say that they're not. It's actually the distributor that's the middleman, if you're going to put them in an order, because the manufacturer sends it to the distributor, sends it to the pharmacy. But the argument is that they are all involved with each other. Like I said, it's kind of a RICO argument where they all had knowledge of what was happening down the line, up and down.
Okay, I believe we have one more question, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shana, I appreciate your time in helping us understand. I do have concerns about the small mom and pops in being involved in this, primarily because of the costs that they're going to incur to try to defend themselves.
Sure.
So our economy is suffering as much as it is.
Absolutely.
I'm hopeful that the ones that we choose, we look at very carefully.
Yes.
So that we aren't basically burying some of these businesses. And I don't know where they are. If they're in the North Country, they might be the only ones there to be able to serve our public up north. So
absolutely.
I want to make sure that we're very cautious about that. And I do have reservations about including these smaller ones because they might just not survive. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's part of the little bit of investigation that my team will do. I don't know, Mara, if you have it in front of her, but I believe it was Price Choppers only. So they're not totally mom and pops. They are a chain, but it was a smaller chain. But I do appreciate the argument, especially I'm very familiar with the Lake George area, etc. So I do understand. For example, I believe one of the facilities was about 20 minutes or so from a hospital, and some people in other parts of the country might think, oh, that's, no one's going to go there. But I know from being up there that sometimes is where the closest hospital is. So I do have an understanding and appreciation of that. And we can provide you more detail to make you feel better about these particular smaller facilities. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the feeling of the board? Do we want to pursue suits against add these people to our lawsuit or not?
And the third option is I can provide you more information as well, of course.
Well, what I have says we have to decide by the 19th. Today's the 19th, so.
Right, because what I wanted to know was, are you totally against it or not? I appreciate your reservations, and as the person who's handling it, I can make sure that nothing happens without your consent. There have been many counties who said, Shana, I trust you to make the right decision. Go right ahead. And there have been some that have said, absolutely not. There's 2 of them. I know the owners, and we're not going to do that. And that's fine too. So if you're in that middle ground, I am happy to look into it more and provide you a little more information in short order to give you a comfort, as long as you're not an absolute no.
Yes, Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can we approve this and then review afterwards and drop them from the suit? Is that one of the options?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And that would be my preference. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, can I just speak up here? Like, I feel like we are gonna have an argument today about we had just done that with Decker, and now we're gonna have a big argument today about Decker, and then the same thing's gonna happen in the opioid litigation. I think that is the worst way to go. I don't think you bring the suit against them and then we withdraw it, because obviously that's caused a whole lot of issues right now. And I really think that's the wrong way to go.
Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification in suit litigation and then withdrawing it. He was right. Mike, can you clarify what you were saying?
I'm sorry, Andrea, I missed it. But basically, I'm not really in favor of moving forward with small mom and pops unless we get a sense, right, that they're good. So I thought was, let's include them now and drop it in 2 or 3 days once we get more information. But I'm not even sure that's reasonable. And it sounds like Mary doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think we have to do that. I think I can provide you with a little more information, and to make you feel more comfortable. That's totally fine.
Do we need a decision today? Sorry to interrupt.
The decision I'd like you to make is absolutely not. If it's an absolutely not without further information, that's the decision that I need to know.
Okay, well, let's get a consensus of the board by a show of hands on how many people would like to include the local pharmacies in this litigation. I see 1. That's all I see is 1. So I guess that's not absolutely not, but it's pretty close.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Okay, I think that settles that then.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you need me to stay on for any other questions?
No, I think we'll be probably moving on to other items.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Shana.
Bye.
Okay, next we have reading of communications.
We received the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting audited financial statements and supplemental other information for years ending December 31, 2019 and 2018. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Financial Report dated November 30, 2019. Warren County Commissioner Jurors Annual Jury Report for 2019. Warren County Jury Board minutes from their April 22nd, 2020 annual meeting. We've received Resolution 187 from the Town of Queensbury, setting public hearing on proposed local law to amend Chapter 179 zoning of Queensbury Town Code to revise a section on parking and loading regulations. Email from June Maxim, North Country Gazette, regarding improper FOIL responses and charges. Letter from F.R. Smith and Sons, Inc. regarding modifications to Speedy's multi-sector general permit. Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board resolution recommending actions to strengthen the clean, drain, and dry aquatic invasive species spread prevention law. And another resolution from the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board requesting review and change of APA policy on agency review of proposals for new telecommunications towers and other tall structures in the Adirondack Park. We also received this morning an email from G. Travis Whitehead, including his written comments and documentation with regard to resolution number 217 of 2020. I emailed that out to the board this morning.
Okay, thank you. Reading of resolutions.
Resolution numbers 196 through 219 were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the Warren County website on June 11th. Resolution numbers 220 through 224 were produced after mailing pursuant to action taken at the June 9th Tax and Tourism Committee meetings and the June 15th Support Services and Personnel Committee meetings. Those were distributed to the members of the Board of Supervisors and posted to the county website on June 16th. A motion is needed to bring resolutions 220 through 224 to the floor.
Moved by Supervisor Simpson, seconded by Supervisor Bramer. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, discussion and public comment on proposed resolutions. Yes, Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like a roll call, please.
Okay.
It's on 206 and 217.
Roll call on 206 and 217. Yes, Supervisor McNiven.
Just a roll call on 212, please.
Roll call on 212. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had previously expressed a roll call desire, but I wondered at the appropriate time, I just need to ask for a formal opinion from our county attorney regarding our general rule, the general statement in our ethics code that says if we're going to recuse or abstain, that we cannot participate in discussion. I'm wondering if there's any exceptions to that, but this is the first I'm really learning that our ethics code prohibits us generally from having any discussion if we're going to abstain or recuse. And it seems, again, I'm going to ask for a training at some point as it relates to Robert's rules and the rules of our board, because I think we're continually having these problems. But Mary, if you can just clarify if there's any exception to that rule, or if you abstain or recuse, you may not have any dialogue whatsoever in a process of voting, because our rules are more prohibited than Robert's rules, which, again, I apologize. I think a lot of us are unclear on that.
Chairman, do you want me to do that now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So section 3.042 of the county policies says that no municipal officer or employee may participate in any decision or take any official action with respect to any matter requiring the exercise of discretion, including discussing the matter and voting on it, when he or she knows or has reason to know that the action could confer a direct or indirect financial or material benefit on himself or herself, a relative, or any private organization in which he or she is deemed to have an interest. So I'm not taking any position on whether there's an interest for Supervisor Sieber here. That's just what our law says, that if you're going to abstain, that you also have to not participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Mary. Just as a follow-up, though, are there exceptions to that at all or no?
There's always exceptions to our ethics law, and those are things like voting on the budget in general. I don't have it right in front of me, but this would not be an exception.
I think for today's purposes, I'll err on this abundance of caution, but I would ask Mr. Chairman again, I know I brought it up in personnel to Supervisor Garrity. Could we please make it a priority to have a training both on Robert's rules and the rules of the board? Because I do think it limits many of our abilities to adequately represent our constituents as it relates to some of these votes. And there seems to be a lot of confusion on what these different terms mean. But I appreciate, Mary, the information. I'll look into it.
Noted. Thank you. Yes, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to request a roll call vote on Resolution 209 and also state that as chair of the Human Services Committee, I have a responsibility for announcing that resolution and encouraging members to consider it. Again, I will be abstaining from voting on
Okay, roll call on 209. Yes, Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment, please, on Resolution 202. Reflecting back to our committee meeting, there was discussions about the terms of the agreement for the consulting services. My understanding at the time, it was an extension of existing consulting services. I requested at that time an agreement that would be available to be reviewed prior to this meeting. The only thing I have here is a scope of work. That, in my opinion, is not an agreement between this consulting and Warren County. I do have a question, though, for Kevin, if he's online. During the scope of this agreement here that's being proposed, it says that work not included in this proposal is subsurface investigation to determine payment of the CBR values. Is that some work that's going to have to be done that's not part of the scope?
It's not guaranteed that this work will have to be done. Once they go out there and do the pavement evaluation first, which is basically visual, then they'll determine whether or not they have to do it. I can't predict right now that that's what it would be, but if they need to do that, determine that CBR value, then it will be covered under the grant work.
But the grant is maxed out at $49,000.
Yeah, that's correct.
The itemized scope of work here is $49,000, and they're very specific here that this work wasn't going to be covered. Where would we get the extra money to pay for it?
We would seek that from FAA or the state.
So it's not covered. If this work has to happen, it's not covered currently under the terms of the grant application that we're submitting.
Under the current term, no, it's not. But to jump back to that CBR value, CBR values can basically be done without doing underground testing. I worked for an engineering firm and we did CBR values just by visual. So it can be done. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to do subsurface investigation. It's a caveat. It's a caveat that they're going to put in the contract just to make sure that if it needs to be there, then it would be extra.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. My position, Mr. Chairman, on this particular resolution, and I'll go on the record now, without having the actual agreement that frames out the timeline to have the work done, or the original agreement that was awarded to this company in past years, I'm going to have to vote no. I'm just going after the record stating that when it comes to the vote.
Do you want a roll call on 202?
Sure. I'll ask for a roll call.
Okay, roll call on 202. Any other discussion on 202? Hearing none, Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. I have discussion on 206 if we're done seeking roll calls. If you're ready for that, Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Recently, we missed an opportunity through the New York Association of Counties, NYSAC, to advocate for more cellular and broadband infrastructure funding through a federal stimulus package. While we did provide a large list of county infrastructure projects, NYSAC asked us for a wish list of projects that would help our communities. I suggested that we advocate for federal funds for broadband and cellular infrastructure needs. I thought we could all agree that federal stimulus funding to bridge the digital divide in our county would dovetail well with state funding through the Broadband Program Office and other state funding, and would be especially useful at this time. The county may not have shovel-ready cell and broadband projects right now, but we could have raised this to NYSAC to show that we're serious about solving these problems for our residents. Not one of the town supervisors who was going to vote for 206 supported me in this advocacy effort. If we really want to improve cellular and emergency communications infrastructure, as we say in Resolution 206 is so important, then we need to set aside politics and take every opportunity to do what we can for our residents. While I am not in favor of the exact wording of Resolution 206 because we didn't do our homework and we didn't do our due diligence to propose specific changes to APA, I do support finding better ways to improve cellular coverage. So I will be voting in support of 206. Additionally, Supervisor Hogan has pointed out there are future opportunities for advocating for improved broadband coverage, which she and I think is very important, especially in this time of online learning and telehealth and telemedicine. Mr. Moore suggested that we put together an ad hoc committee to work on broadband problems throughout the county, and I would be happy to serve on that committee, Chairman. And I urge you to create such a committee, and I would be happy to serve on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on 206? Supervisor Simpson.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say the last few years we have been advocating in Washington through NACO with NYSAC. NYSAC is the one who set up the meetings, working with our Senator Gillibrand, Senator Schumer on a federal infrastructure program, which has still not been completed at the federal level, precisely for cellular and broadband. So there are there is progress in that. We need to keep urging our federal representatives to make that happen and come to an agreement so that we do have those federal funds. And I also, this resolution is not asking New York State to fund cell towers in the Adirondacks. What we want to do is create a level playing field, a playing field that allows private investment in the Adirondacks. The Adirondacks really isn't looking for New York State to fund everything for them. We need less government. We need more opportunity for our private businesses to be profitable in the Adirondacks so that we're not the people that don't have as other areas do. Thank you.
Supervisor Liggett, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this resolution, we had also received from the clerk of the board what the review board had passed. Looks like it was a resolution that Washington County had passed. I like the language in that resolution better than this one, because this one seems to put the onus of the lack of cell phone coverage in the Adirondacks on regulation or the policy implemented by the APA board, when really it comes down to a matter of economics. That is the real weak link. That is the reason there is not cell phone coverage in the Adirondacks. It is not economically viable for these companies. Just this past week, I talked to a representative that is working on the FirstNet with AT&T to put in 20 towers across the Adirondack Park, 250 throughout the state as part of this larger federal program. And they have those applications in front of the APA now, and they're working through some of them, one of them in the town of Chester. And some of the problems that you run into is when it comes down to the economics is that a cell tower that handles one location is not strong enough to handle two. So they need to replace towers, which cost money, et cetera, et cetera. The push really needs to come to get these private companies to invest in our area. And the only way it's going to be profitable for them is if we step in with public money to do that. There's problems with that, as we are all suffering from 3 phases of broadband expansion within New York State, and we are here in the Adirondacks without complete coverage of broadband. And areas left out, specifically the town of Chester. When you look at the phases that have been awarded on the phase 3, there, Chester got left holding the bag with HughesNet. Meanwhile, SLIC is working its way all the way through Johnsburg, Thurman, up into Essex County, and so on. And other providers like Spectrum are more reluctant to build out. It's not profitable for them, even though they are receiving government funding and subsidies to do this. I'm just getting on my soapbox about this because usually we point to regulation as being the problem to economic development. And you really have to take into effect of our location. We have mountains and valleys. It's a very difficult terrain in the first place to cover with cell phones. And then the other is we do not have a population that can support the investment of these private companies who are looking at cost benefit ratios. I'll get off my soapbox and return it to the floor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other discussion on 206? Anyone else? Yes, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure. There was something brought up by Mary, I believe, about a revision to the resolution referencing the correct act. I don't recall exactly. I didn't write it down. I'm not sure if Mary's still here to help with that, but if I'm open to that if the board will consider that resolution or modification.
Okay, I'm not sure if Mary's with us.
I'm here.
Which section of the resolution did that pertain to?
So just instead of having tower policy in quotes, which is what we refer to the regulation as in the resolution, we would just call it by the correct document name, which is Policy on Agency Review of Proposals for New Telecommunications Towers and Other Tall Structures in the Adirondack Park.
I'm not sure if I can make that motion, Mr. Chairman, but I would make that motion.
Yes, motion to amend by Supervisor Wild to correct the, to provide the correct name for the tower policy.
John Stroud, I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Supervisor Stroud. Any discussion on the amendment?
Yeah.
Supervisor Liggett.
Thank you. I know that Supervisor Sieber wanted to add on who this should be sent to as well. Is that still a valid concern there for the supervisor?
Yeah, if Mr. Wild and Mr. Stroud has no objections, we can
no objection
at the same time.
No objection.
Supervisor Sieber.
I guess I just want to, am I unmuted? Am I finally working?
Yes.
I know other counties have passed resolutions that are identical to what we've proposed here today. Just to be clear then, do we need to list all the places that the resolution needs to be sent to? It's my understanding that once it's passed, we can forward this resolution on to anyone. It's public, but it doesn't need to be listed there. I'd asked Ryan more about it. Maybe Ryan wants to weigh in.
Ryan or the county attorney? Or the clerk? Yes.
when we put names in the resolution at the end, that just authorizes or directs the clerk to automatically send certified copies. And it more or less indicates who you're directing the resolution towards. We can certainly send it to anyone after it's public, but this indicates who you want the resolution to reach.
I was on the phone with the governor's office. I just hung up. I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
It's about who the resolution 206 possibly could be sent to. If we have anybody besides the park agency.
You want me to call the governor's office back and tell them we're going to send it to them?
Ryan, I threw you into the conversation here because they're discussing amending Resolution 206, and Craig can give you a better recap of what that's for in terms of the title of the resolution. But also it came up about asking who this resolution could be sent to in committee. I said, well, why aren't we sending it to, all these other agencies? And it was my understanding after talking to you that, we certainly could send it on after it's passed to whoever we wanted. Once it's a public document, so the need to amend that wasn't necessary. But I just wanted to make sure I was right on that. And maybe Craig could just re-clarify the other piece of it for you.
We could do it either way. If you want to add entities to it, we can amend it. If you don't want to go through the amendment, just tell me and Amanda to send it, and we'll send it. We work for you, so whether it's in the resolution or not, we'll do what you tell us.
Well, we have an amendment on the floor to correct the tower policy to the correct name of what it is, and we also have permission from the people that moved the amendment and seconded it to add names where we would specifically like this resolution to go, besides the Adirondack Park Agency. That's where we're at. Unless we have a list, I'm going to end the discussion. Supervisor Simpson.
I just want everybody to realize that in this tower policy that the APA has, they don't specifically say a tower height. What we're asking, this is how interpretation of their policy. So there really isn't a direct change. It's in how they view administering their act. So I'm not really hung up on the name. It's more about the substance. It sends the right message. I just want everybody to be clear. There isn't a policy that says the tower can only be 40 foot high or 30 foot high or treetops. It's how they interpret their language that they have.
Okay, so on the amendment, which is from my perspective a technical correction, I'll call the question. Is everyone in favor? Aye, raise your hand, please.
Aye.
And opposed?
I recuse.
One recusal. Anyone else opposed? Okay. So that's the amendment. So we can continue discussion on the resolution as amended. If anyone hasn't, I think Supervisor Bramer, I believe she had a comment earlier.
Thanks so much, Chairman. I just wanted to echo what Supervisor Leggett said about the importance of some public financing, because we do have private entities coming into the Adirondack Park. There's dozens of applications that have been approved or pending for new cell phone towers. And so it's not necessarily that private investors won't come here. It's just that it's not always economical for them. So I do think that the public financing is important. And it also goes to the fact that we did not do our due diligence on this resolution exactly, because we never invited any of the private companies to come and talk to us about what were the problems with cell phone towers in the Adirondack.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on 206? Hearing none, I'll close discussion on 206. Any other resolutions anyone would like to discuss?
Chairman.
Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Yes, on 217, I know our county attorney said earlier that we were going to have a big fight about this or something. I am not going to have a big fight about it. I am disappointed that the stipulation of discontinuance was filed with the county court and clerk's office before the full board had an opportunity to vote on this. I mean, I agree with dropping the lawsuit. I think it should be ended. However, if this was a different issue that I didn't agree with and the action was already taken and I didn't have a chance to vote, I would be very upset. I don't think this is the right process. We shouldn't be entering into binding actions without full board approval. That's all. That's the only comment I have for that. And the other thing is that Decker's attorneys have been telling us for months that they're going to sue us. And so I'm not sure why we weren't alerted of that sooner, and then we had to take this action so quickly without waiting for the full board approval at today's meeting.
Okay, noted. Any other resolutions? Yes, Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you. Discussing 217, the board was never allowed to terminate the lawsuit, but the lawsuit is now terminated. And I think by statute, that decision can only be made by a weighted vote. So I am totally in the dark on this. The personnel committee recommended that it be terminated. And then we've already terminated it. And I know I represent the town of Queensbury. I never had a vote on that. And I don't think the vast majority of the board never did, but it's already terminated. So I guess us even having a resolution on it is a moot point. I mean, we've already basically allowed a committee to determine for the whole board to dismiss a lawsuit, which I find rather scary. Maybe facilities will start initiating lawsuits or dismissing lawsuits on their own, if that's all it takes. This isn't right. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't smell right, and it isn't right. So I'm going to be voting no. I'd like to not vote at all, because we shouldn't even be having a vote to something that's already done. I mean, that makes no sense to anybody. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on 217?
Mr. Chairman, it's Don Lehman. We do have a public comment on 217 if you want to take that now.
Okay, sure.
It's from G. Travis Whitehead of Queensbury. I would like to make sure that all of you understand that Resolution 217 is a blatant affront to the very legitimacy of this board. Though the words are cleverly parsed, it falsely puts a question to you that has already been decided, a bell that cannot be unrung, and as such, if it is even considered today, you are violating the trust the public has placed in your hands. I have put all the particulars into a document which is in your hands. I will not repeat myself here. Suffice it to say that the Decker lawsuit has already been dismissed, and for reasons that are unclear, but that is not a matter for debate or even a vote today, as its dismissal has already been decided for you. A negative vote on Resolution 217 would be meaningless, and therefore your vote has been made meaningless. You have been robbed of due process. The public has been robbed of their representation in this matter. The only thing that can be done today is to examine how you got to this point and to institute controls to ensure the situation is not repeated in the future. The lesson to be learned is that by rules of this board, a committee vote never authorizes anything beyond bringing the matter before the board, where it will be decided by a weighted vote. Anything else would be in violation of the Equal Protection Act. I am sure that most of you understand that already, but you have to wonder if your county attorney and county administrator understand that as well. Both should be admonished for allowing this sequence of events to unfold, and worse, never letting you know ahead of time that this lawsuit was dismissed minutes after the committee meeting and long before today's scheduled vote. Signed, G. Travis Whitehead, Town of Queensbury.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments before we move on to further discussion?
No, sir.
Thank you, Don. Supervisor Hogan.
Thank you, Chairman.
217.
You know, these have been incredibly stressful days for everyone. And what we're struggling under today, or what it seems to me we're struggling with today, is just a sloppiness of process. And it's not just on 217. We've raced a couple things through here without really taking the time that was due, the consideration that was due. And moving forward, I just would like to encourage the board to well, number one, take a breath and be forgiving of one another, in that we're all doing the best we can in the middle of a pandemic without a playbook. But also, let's tighten it up, folks. We can do better. That's all.
Thank you. Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief, but sometimes, and I've had issues at times with our last minute decisions, but there are times when you need to make a decision based on some type of clock that's running. And in this case, based on my recall, we needed to make a decision right away. It was open to committee. It was broadcast. It was broadcast on YouTube, I believe, and Facebook, I think. But it was open to the public and to all the other supervisors who cared to attend to join in on the discussion. So it was one of those decisions that the consequences defined us or directed us to make a decision right away. I don't like that, but in this case, that was the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on 217? I believe Administrator Moore wanted to comment.
Oh, I would echo Andrea's comments on, I guess, the fact that we're all trying to do the best we can under non-ideal circumstances. I'd also like to say that it's not without precedent for the Board of Supervisors to ratify actions that have already been taken. I mean, I don't have any counts, but I'd be interested to see how many times we've ratified actions like this in the past. The very act of bringing this civil suit against Dave Decker was a ratification, if you recall. So if anybody wants to make the argument that, you know, that process is illegal or not against statute, I'd love to see what statute that is. I heard that word thrown out. Maybe they ought to take a look at the action that brought the lawsuit in the first place. We have OCTAX litigation that has recovered a lot of money for this county that's been approved in a similar fashion. To Mike Wild, Supervisor Wild's point, we live in a real world with real deadlines, and we do the best we can.
Okay, thank you. Is any other discussion, any other resolutions we would like to discuss? If not, then next is vote on resolutions.
Okay, Resolution 196, making supplemental appropriations. Ms. Shepler? Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Dickinson?
yes.
Mr. Merlino? Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 197, amending Warren County budget for 2020. Ms. Shepler?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud, Mr. Shower shaking his head, that's a yes. Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 202, authorizing agreement with Jacob Civil Consultants. Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
No.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution number 206, requesting the Adirondack Park Agency review and modify current cell tower regulations as amended. Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Recuse.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution number 209, authorizing continuation of contractual relationships for special delinquency prevention programs. Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
Yes.
Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Bruno,
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll,
Abstain.
Ms. Frazier,
Yes.
Mr. Simpson,
Yes.
Ms. Hogan,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
Yes.
Mr. Stroud,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Mr. McGowan,
Yes.
Ms. Seaver,
Yes.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas,
Yes.
resolution passes. Resolution 212, authorizing revocable right-of-way private use licensing agreement with Stewart's Corporation. Ms. Shepler,
Yes.
Mr. Garrity,
Yes.
Mr. Conover,
Yes.
Mr. Leggett,
Yes.
Mr. Diamond,
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt,
No, let me just make a brief comment if I can, please. Sometimes we subjectively look at pieces of real estate, automobiles, paintings, and we come to a conclusion that it just isn't fundamentally right. There are some pros and cons as it relates to the Stewart's project in Glens Falls. I'm in this facility probably 2 times a week, and I have taken the time to look at the cement patch that they're proposing to connect us to our pathway. At the end of the day, in my opinion, subjectively, the project's too big for the neighborhood. Stewart's has taken a cookie cutter approach. The project ought to essentially be half the size it currently is right now. On the plus side for Stewart's, they've done great landscaping on the project. They're a good employer, and they basically have done a quality project. At the end of the day, it's too big. It is right in the heart of hundreds of small residences in the city of Glens Falls, and it takes up an entire city block. So I'm going to respectfully vote no. on this project because I as a way of protesting the size of the development on Ridge Street in Glens Falls. Thank you.
Ms. Bramer?
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution number 215, amending table of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan for 2020. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 217, ratifying the actions of the county attorney and withdrawing litigation against David Decker. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
No.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Abstain.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
We'll check the vote on that. That resolution passes by a vote of 648 in favor. Resolution 218, establishing capital project H400 Airport Pavement Management Plan. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Sorry, which resolution are we on?
It's resolution 218.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 219, authorizing the appropriation of funds from the Environmental Testing Reserve Fund to the Real Property Tax Services budget. Ms. Shepherd?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Conover?
Yes.
Right. Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Ms. Hogan?
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Ms. Seaver?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes.
The resolution passes by a vote of 684 in favor. That's the last roll call. You just need to collect the numbers.
Okay, and a vote on the collective. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Let's see, next we have privilege of the floor and public comment. Mr. Lehman, is there any further comments from anyone from the public?
Yes, sir. We do have a follow-up comment from G. Travis Whitehead of Queensbury. He wrote, "We have never been told of any critical time element in dismissing the Decker lawsuit. It was initiated under a time constraint, however, and while I noted that, I did not complain about it. Furthermore, I strenuously objected to Decker being named as defendant when this was initiated as being the wrong party, and apparently his defense attorney agrees and now forced this dismissal. I am disappointed in the administrator's comment in saying this has happened before as if it is no big deal. I agree with Supervisor Hogan that we can and should do better." End of comment.
Okay, anyone else?
Let me just call up that window. Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Let's see, what are we at here? Announcements. Anyone have any announcements? Yes, Supervisor Shepler.
The town chairman forgot to announce the cancellation of the 29 concert series and the cancellation of the end of season fireworks.
Can't hear.
On the town as a result of the pandemic. Thank you.
Well,
Could that be repeated, please? Just maybe Chairman Thomas, if you could just give a quick synopsis.
yes, she was announcing that the summer concerts and the fireworks in the town of Fairwind have been canceled.
Thank you.
Who took Mike Wild's place?
Nobody. Nobody can take Mike Wild's place.
Supervisor Branger.
Thank you so much. I did want to announce that the city is opening Haviland's Cove for swimming on June 29th, I think is the date, and there will be a fee for vehicles. But it's exciting that the beach is going to be open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've asked Don to send this out publicly, but I'll ask him to send a copy of this to all of you. We, during COVID this year, didn't really have an opportunity to recognize or talk much about National Crime Victims' Rights Week, but I want to let you know of a regional and a national effort that's taking place tomorrow, and would ask as supervisors of the board that you would consider on June 20th to light a luminary or a candle outside your house. We're asking this in recognition of crime victims and inviting people to join to remember our loved ones who have experienced victimization. It's important to continue to support each other as we look for recovery, justice, and a sense of hope in the future. This year's theme was Seek Justice, Enforce Victims' Rights, and Inspire Hope. This continues to challenge all of us to raise awareness for victims' rights and inspire hope for our victims, survivors, and communities for future progress and for greater healing. And I would certainly appreciate any efforts any of you could do to light a candle outside your house tomorrow to continue to recognize those that are victimized and the problems we're continuing to have in our criminal justice system.
Thank you, Supervisor Seaver. Supervisor Stroud.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to highlight the fact that the Fund for Lake George put out there like Person of the Year recognition, and that went to Mayor Blaze of the village of Lake George, and recognizing his efforts to save and enhance the quality of Lake George's water. So I just wanted to bring that recognition forward. I think it's significant, and I think he is well deserving of it. Thank you.
Here, here.
Supervisor Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a follow-up comment to Mr. McDevitt on Stewart's. I walked by that Stewart's facility, well, only 7 out of 7 days. And they've already put in the access to the bike trail. I thought it was absolutely 100% professionally done. I won't argue with Mr. McDevitt about the size that's of the Stewart's location. That's not for me to decide, but I can tell you that I've never, very rarely do I see a facility that is so landscaped and clean and neat. And I was very impressed, to be frank with you. I wish Stewart's would do all theirs like that. That was that impressive to me anyway. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before we adjourn, I would like to draw your attention to the proclamation that's included in your packet. June 15th was Elder Abuse Awareness Day. I would just like to say that every day ought to be Elder Abuse Awareness Day.
I'm with you, Frank.
I would just make that note. Yeah, Supervisor Conover.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Next Thursday, when all of you are sitting around waiting to watch Summer Rush on Lake George for our region, you also might want to take a look and read this month's issue of the Association of Towns. There's a number of great articles in there, one of which is on the woodchip bioreactor here in Bolton Landing. It's very well done. So I'd encourage you to take a, not only read the magazine, but take a look for that article. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Moved by Supervisor Dickinson, seconded by Supervisor Simpson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Boink.